Hi there, Nick here from Conservation Careers, and welcome to the podcast. Last year, Sir David Attenborough said that saving the planet is now a communications challenge. And within conservation, there's a growing realization that we need to do much more to share our messages, to encourage more support and action. And as a result, conservation employers are rapidly looking for people with communications skills. They want staff who can plan communications activities, they can write effectively, get press and media attention, engage audiences on social media, deliver campaigns, write blogs, produce podcasts, and much more. Now, we analysed over 30,000 conservation jobs at Conservation Careers from across 100 countries, and we found that 41% explicitly wanted people with communications skills or experience. And here to discuss this today is our in-house communications coach, Lloyd Gofton. Now, Lloyd has over 20 years of communications experience built in the agency sector, working for brands such as WWF, Greenpeace, RSPCA, along with Virgin Atlantic, Samsung, Honda, to mention just a few. And in this episode, we talk about why conservationists need better communications skills and discuss some examples of the power of communications for making a real difference in the sector. So if you'd like to be more employable, and if you'd like to have more impact, then listen on. Enjoy.
Hi there, my name is Lloyd Gofton. I am the communications coach at Conservation Careers. I also volunteer for a number of conservation organisations, including Sussex Dolphin Project, that we will talk about in a bit. And I have various communications roles that we may well speak about in this episode.
Yeah, and it's great to have you sort of finally on the podcast as well, Lloyd. I mean, you and I, we've been working together now for, I guess, nearly a couple of years, something like that. We both share a passion around communications and conservation. And we're here to talk about that today, really, about how communications is a kind of core skill for conservationists and how it will help, more people to have more impact in their careers as well. So thanks for joining us, Lloyd. It's great to have you on the call. Where do we start? Well, look, we're in COP week, climate change week here. It's 2nd of November, 2021. And it opened up yesterday with a really impassioned speech from Sir David Attenborough talking about the need to act now. And if anyone saw that, really, really made you kind of hair stand up on the back of your neck. And it made me reflect again something that he said last year. I think it was on the front cover of the Radio Times here in the UK, which was saving the planet is now a communications challenge. And as always, Sir David puts it so clearly and so eloquently and so succinctly, actually, to the point. And that's something that I think I felt more and more as well, actually, that, communications really is a vital tool for conservationists and a vital tool for having more impact. But Lloyd, you've got a background, and we're going to talk more about your background in a minute as well, in marketing and PR and comms specifically. Why do you think communications is such a kind of key skill for conservationists nowadays? Why did Sir David Attenborough even make that quote, do you reckon?
Well, I think, first of all, he's the embodiment of a great communicator. He's trusted, respected, delivers sound bites beautifully, pauses in between each message. So he's very good at it, obviously, and he's had a lot of experience. So I think that's the first thing to say. In terms of conservation, the one thing that's clear to me coming from the outside, being a career switcher, getting into conservation, focused 100% the last few years, it's seeing that we have so much information, we have so many amazing brains, we have so much insight in terms of how we can fix a lot of our problems. The issue, at least from my understanding, is more about getting that across to people and how we communicate that to the average person, to our governments, to our legislators, to whoever that may be, in a way that they can understand and take on board. So therefore, I feel that's where Sir David's coming from, in terms of course, there's a lot of work to be done. It's not just about having a chat, but we know a lot of the solutions. We know a lot of what needs to happen. We just need to make that happen. And the only way we can make that happen is by reaching out to the entire world population, as well as those in charge, and making sure that they can make those changes happen. That's what I think he means. And it makes absolute sense to me.
Yeah. And I feel exactly the same, actually. I think when I sort of hear about that sort of quote as well from Sir David, it's about this idea that I think we know what needs to happen, and been very good today as a kind of community, as a conservation community, if you like, of preaching to the converted. People are already interested and always sort of leaning forwards into wildlife conservation and wanting to do something, whether professionally or just, on their own in their weekends in the garden, whatever it might be. There's lots of people out there and they're already engaged, and we are engaging them. The issue that we face is just reaching the 90% of the population that just aren't engaged yet in this issue, or maybe have a little inkling, but we've not kind of managed to reach them. And really, as a sector today, we've been quite kind of science-based, I think, as well. Traditionally, it's been the conservation movement's been based upon people with scientific backgrounds coming in and then working across lots of different role types. And to be honest, I sort of embody that myself. Did a PhD in barn owl conservation years ago, and one of my early roles was as a communications officer at BirdLife International, where I worked for 3 or 4 years doing press and media and stuff that is bread and butter for you, Lloyd. But I had no background in that. I was sort of selected because I had an understanding of the topic, bird conservation, and I had a passion about communications. I liked writing, I liked talking, I liked doing all that sort of stuff, but I didn't really have any traditional training. Whereas nowadays, and we'll probably talk about this in a bit as well, it's changed quite a lot. The movement wants people with core skills in communications and training and background, because we need to be much better at talking to people who just don't quite understand the issues and the solutions and everything else that kind of comes with that. So yeah, comm skills has just become, I think, so important for conservationists nowadays, and employers are looking for these skills as well. So it's a good area and a good thing for us to be kind of talking through today, I think, on the podcast as well, and sort of sharing with people.
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually conservation is the perfect reflection of the way the general communications campaign works, which is starting with awareness, building to education, and then taking action. And I think from a general perspective, the population is aware there's a problem. I think what they're missing is the education to then build upon that awareness. Okay, what do I do as an individual? So the average person knows they should probably be driving an electric vehicle. They know they should probably be cutting down on their air travel. They know they should probably be reducing their red meat intake. They know all those kind of things, but what else? They don't really get beyond that. So it's that education point of view, I think, is what's coming through now, and then we can build that to action. And I think obviously COP26 is hopefully going to be a huge part of that. We'll probably look back at this in a couple of weeks and we'll know. But right today, day 2, we're hoping that we'll be a big part of that. And then we'll see what the rollout is from there. So the education builds from there. So yeah, from my point of view, coming from outside the sector, I can see that generally from a communication to a consumer or a public audience, we're at that kind of education stage now where people, at least the average person, I would argue, understand there's a problem. How do we now all fix it? And that's where we're at, I think.
And we had a good example of that a few years ago now, I guess, with like Blue Planet. And again, going back to Sir David, I guess, who really is probably the most important conservationist on the planet and is a communicator at heart. He embodies these skills. He spent his career sort of selling the natural beauty, of wildlife around the planet, and engaging, millions of people, into wildlife and caring about wildlife that maybe weren't beforehand. But I would say only in recent years he's started actually asking people to do something about it. It's been very much laid upon education, natural history, beauty, and just getting people to care. And then more recently talking about some of the problems, climate change or deforestation or plastic pollution in the sea or whatever it might be. Only really in the last decade or so, I think, really he sort of pressed that switch quite strongly as part of his shows, on Netflix and BBC and elsewhere. And then he's actually started asking people more recently to actually do something and giving people a clear call to action, something to do. And specifically, Blue Planet was about reducing plastic pollution. What can we do at home to do around that? Can we recycle our plastic bags or use again bags or whatever it might be? And that really did seem to kind of very quickly flick a global switch to tackling issues of marine plastic pollution, which is one issue of very, very many that we see, but it's a good example of someone who's done all the kind of major steps so incredibly well, and what happened as a result of that. So there's a big opportunity for doing a lot more of that, in conservation as well. But it needs that clarity, just like you said, education, and then action that kind of builds off the back of that, giving people kind of clear stuff that we can all do at home. Lloyd, you've been working at the Sussex Dolphin project, which was formerly known as the Brighton Dolphin project. That was a rebrand that I go you've been involved with as well. It would be really interesting to hear some of the stuff you've been doing, over the last couple of years as well. Is it just a good example of kind of communications in action within conservation? But maybe before we do that, would you just give us like a bit of a potted history of your background? Because I know you've been working in comms, PR, and media now for 20 odd years. What's your background, and has it been all conservation, or have you weaved around a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. And I think from my point of view, I did, as you said, went into, I guess, traditional PR in 1998. So yeah, quite a while ago now. I came straight out of university. I did a business and marketing degree, so something relevant. Being honest, stumbled into a job in a PR agency, not too far away from where I lived at the time. And then pretty much stayed doing that role ever since. But it has evolved massively in terms of the way you communicate. So I focused originally on talking to the press, so getting stories in newspapers, on TV, wherever that may be. But over time, the way that people communicate has obviously changed. When I first started, we were still folding press releases on paper and sticking them in an envelope, which is clearly not a very sustainable way of doing it, but we weren't even thinking about it then. And then posting them. But obviously that evolved to email, and then obviously in terms of the web, got more popular. That was only really starting to build up when I was at university in the 90s. So I've seen a massive shift in the way we communicate, starting from the written word, truly actually letters going out to journalists talking about press releases, through to email, through to social media, really coming to the fore around 2004, 2005, and building out through there. And I guess from my point of view, kind of tracking the way that communications evolved, I started my own agency specializing in social media and PR in 2006, to kind of be one of the first to look at both, which, it's obvious now, but look at both traditional talking to media and also social media, how you talk to an audience. And the difference I would always say is talking to journalists, if you're talking to a newspaper, for example, they may have political affiliations or they may have a certain way of writing, whereas with social media, you're talking to individuals and you're hearing their issues, and you're able, as a brand or an organization, to communicate with them directly. So you've seen that way, and I guess the whole communication sector has mirrored that change in the way we communicate now. So we as communicators have to be a lot more open. We have to be great listeners, first of all, so that we can understand what the community is saying and then offer something relevant and push that back out, rather than just saying this brand is the best at, we are the most amazing cars, or we have the best aircraft, or whatever that might be, because people now know that's not the case, because we have social media and customers can go, you're not the best car because it breaks down all the time, or blah blah blah, whatever that may be. So brands or organizations have been forced to be honest, which from a communications point of view I found really fascinating. And that evolution has moved on. So I guess 23 years of communications along that path, I found that I was really motivated by conservation, and I worked with a few brands like WWF and Greenpeace, RSPCA, those kind of organizations. And a few years ago, I really came to the point where I wanted to combine my passion for the natural world with my job. So I decided to focus 100% on conservation. And that's, Nick, where we first met, and you were very kind to take me under your wing and help me along that process to focus fully on conservation, which I'm forever appreciative of. And as part of that, building up to your question originally, I decided, how could I impact and how could I learn more about conservation rather than just communicating? I could get involved in a local organisation. To me, I live very close to Brighton, and I was fascinated, always have been, by marine conservation. So the Brighton, as it was then, Dolphin project seemed to make a lot of sense. And I went down to see those guys, kind of gave them some background on who I am. Their comms guy had literally just handed in his notice. It happened to be that kind of wonderful moment where there was a massive opportunity. I walked through the door and I haven't left since then. So,
perfect timing.
Yes, no, exactly. So it's been a roller coaster ride, but it's been amazing because, as I always say to people on the course or wherever I'm talking to, you learn so much by volunteering within these types of organizations that I had no idea about. I've worked with all types of massive brands, startups, whatever that might be. But being on the ground in a small charity where you have to do everything, you learn so much so quickly. And I think that's been hugely powerful for me.
Is it what you expected? Sort of coming in from outside the conservation movement, if you like, and bringing all your skills now into it and creating impact within, which is what we need sorely. Is working for, say, a small charity what you expected, or what how would you sort of reflect on that for people who are listening?
I think there's two ways of looking at it. One, so I was, and something that you always talk about that I've experienced for many years now, is the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Where you immediately feel, oh my God, these guys are scientists and they have, years of experience and they understand, way more experience in this area than I have. What can I add to, this important charity? What can I do? And then suddenly you realize, actually, although they are amazing at what they do and they have some brilliant skills, what they don't have is what I'm bringing to the table in terms of communication skills, in terms of press coverage, in terms of being able to expand their social audiences, in terms of those sorts of things. So I suddenly felt that I do have a role, I do have a place, even though I'm not a marine biologist, even though I'm not a scientist, even though I don't have that research background, I can bring something useful. And in fact, what I'm bringing is actually really relevant right now, because of not just, as we spoke about at the start, in terms of the way conservation is a communications challenge in many ways. It's also to help that very small charity grow. And, as with any conservation organization, funding is always an issue, and, communication can be part of that, or whether that's issues that we've talked about before, and we'll talk about again about super trawlers, the dolphins are dying. We can use communications to communicate issues like that and help to challenge the people that are causing those problems through communications, whatever that may be. There's so many opportunities that I can help with through skills that I felt weren't relevant, but are actually, once I'm on the inside, can see they're really useful.
Yeah, and I think that's really good to share as well, actually. Yeah, so a lot of people feel that, I don't know, I feel like conservationists are often like on a pedestal somehow because of the, worthiness or knowledge or whatever it might be. And I really feel that that shouldn't be the case, that we need people just like you. Your skills are so valuable. I've been working in conservation now like 20 years, and I've not met anyone who has the skills that you have within the sector. And it makes such a difference, someone coming in with professional skill set from outside, and it's what organizations are looking for, actively looking for people like you nowadays. Come in and deploy your skills, help us raise more support, help us reach a bigger audience, help our messages actually, convert to impact. It's and people listening out there, we do need people like you. And a lot of the knowledge, I think, within conservation, you can kind of pick up on the job. You must have learned so much about dolphins and whales, or cetaceans, I guess they're called, more generally, just through, just getting stuck in, whereas actually learning how to do the press work, the social media work and everything else, that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to really get as good at as where you are. So, there's sort of two sides to it. And I think you can pick up an awful lot, on the job. When you sort of started out there at the Sussex Dolphin Project, or Brighton as it was back then, there's a bit of a story to be told, really, isn't there, in terms of dolphins being washed up on the beach and problems around that, and where that's kind of led in terms of like a communications campaign and where it is now. Lead us through, take us from a dolphin on the beach, a very sad event, to what's happened as a result of that.
No, absolutely. When I started at the Brighton Dolphin Project, it was very much about, so our main role was about research, and we use citizen science for people basically to take pictures and video when they see a dolphin or a porpoise, whatever, send that into us, and we can use that as part of our citizen science research project. And that's brilliant. So part of my role of running the social profiles and doing the communications was handling all this amazing content, seeing all these amazing footage of huge pods of dolphins doing all this amazing acrobatics. That's brilliant. So that went through my first summer, amazing, up through to October, November, around this time when I first started. And then suddenly the pictures switched. The stories we were getting switched from amazing interactions with dolphins to dead dolphins, and not pretty images, and dolphins being washed up. Some of them clearly still tied with ropes, some of them missing flukes, and some of them missing heads, whatever. Probably stuff we don't need to go into, but let me promise you, it was quite unnerving to put it on it. And they kept coming, through that first winter. The bodies just kept popping up.
And this is something that suddenly happened much more frequently than it was previously. Is that
It was certainly to me anyway, and the project was quite young, so it's kind of difficult to. So the project is now only 3.5 years old. So, but the people within the project knew what was going on, but they hadn't seen it on that scale. So, on that first winter, we had I think 17 bodies that we were aware of along the Sussex coast that washed up. Now we're not aware, obviously, of all of them because we don't have that network of people that we can see every single cetacean, but we got most of them, I'm sure. And we're also aware, certainly the scientists would tell you, that generally about 10% of dolphins that die at sea will wash up, because obviously sea's a big place, they get taken out to sea or they sink, whatever might happen. So that's only 10% of what we're seeing. And
it's a bit more like a couple of hundred probably.
Exactly, at least exactly what we're seeing. So we knew that from the timings of when these bodies were washing up, we knew that super trawlers, which are large 100-meter plus vessels that fish mid-water, so they're pelagic fishes, so they're after the mid-water fish, so be that mackerel or whiting, or those types of fish, which are also dolphins' main prey. So the dolphins are following the schools of fish. Super trawler is coming along, dragging nets up to 1 mile long. The net itself, very long itself. It's huge mouth of opening. It can fit about 450 tennis courts in one of these nets. These are massive nets. We've got some infographics to show the scale of them, but it's very hard to communicate. So clearly, when you're getting these massive schools of fish, you're going to get whatever else is in the way. There's going to be huge bycatch issues, and unfortunately, some of those bycatch issues are related to the dolphins that are chasing the fish themselves. And of course, they don't want dolphins. As not many people in this world anyway eat dolphins. There's a good reason for that. A, it's probably very dangerous meat, and B, it doesn't taste very good. So no one wants a dolphin. They get rid of them, throw them overboard, and that's what we were seeing fundamentally. So that was obviously heartbreaking. But it was an opportunity for communications point of view, because we couldn't physically stop them. These vessels are fishing a minimum of 12 miles out, so it's not something you can see. We can go out on boats, but in the winter in the English Channel, it's not pretty. And the boats are up and down like that. So we did actually go out to try and take pictures of these vessels because they're massive. We managed to get a few, but we promise you, the English Channel isn't somewhere you want to be in the middle of winter, especially on a small boat. But what could we do? And the one thing we could do is make people aware. So, of course, we get the average person saying, why is there a dead dolphin, with its tail hacked off on the beach? What's going on? And you can explain to that one individual, but that's not really raising awareness. So we could take that to our social media profiles, and we could share that with our community, and we could take that to the local newspapers, and we could share that with our local community. We could take that to the national newspapers, and we can share it on a national stage. We could take that to the international media, broadcast media. And suddenly people are being made aware that that fish that you're eating, wherever that may be, did a dolphin die for that? Or was there huge scale of bycatch as a result of that one fish that you're eating, or that fish finger, or whatever that may be? And how can we change that? How can we make people aware of that? How can we legislate against that? How can we put in some sort of system that people, when they know they're buying it from a sustainable source rather than an unsustainable source? All those kind of questions were coming through, and that's where the kind of super trawler campaign started. And it's still going today. So we're expanding that campaign now. We're about to launch it again this year, because this is when the season starts in the UK. So super trawlers fish through the autumn and winter in the UK, because that's when the fish that they're after are around, basically in huge schools. The rest of the time they're all around the planet, so they're down to Australia, up to the Caribbean, wherever they may be. They're constantly moving. So we see this as our opportunity to build awareness on the ground through the bodies that we will be seeing again. We already have seen a few this year, and there will be an explosion in that, unfortunately, as the super trawlers come through, and we'll be tracking them, and we'll be making people aware of them, and we'll be driving that, using that negative against the legislators, and saying, look, we need change. This is not acceptable. And it's not just because dolphins, everyone loves a dolphin, and they perform an extremely powerful and useful role in terms of the marine ecosystem. What they do as apex predators, they need to be there. That's a huge part of the balance that we're trying to achieve. So it's not just about, we want to see pretty dolphins, obviously we do, but there's a bigger role, there's a bigger issue here about how we make that balance.
I think it's amazing, like the story, like how it's gone in a couple of years from what felt like quite a local, small scale issue to actually realizing it's bigger than you think it was. realizing that actually it's these huge trawlers that are kind of coming through the channel with links to Brexit here in the UK and other stuff that's going on, you know. And from what I've heard, it's become more like an international campaign as well.
Absolutely.
You just talk through like the sort of the nuts and bolts, if you like, of like what the communications campaign involved doing, like what sort of skills were you deploying, if you like, and what have been some of the outcomes of the campaign as well. Can you just sort of talk to that for a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I looked at it as from a tactical point of view in terms of how can I make the most impact? How I wanted as many people as possible to know, not me personally, but us as a group wanted as many people to know about this so that they could be as outraged as we were. Because we were seeing it on the beach, because that's part of what we do. We go out on the beach. Our office is literally next to the beach. We had a common dolphin pop up on our local beach, which is literally a 5-minute walk from our office, with it's a picture we use a lot, with rope tied around its tail, and it had literally been dumped over the side of with a crane over the side of a super trawler and dumped, and it ended up out of our office. It's almost like a message. It felt like a message to us. And we took that as a red rag to a bull, and we used that. So from my point of view, I wanted as many people to feel as enraged as I was, or we were, through that picture, and that picture was very powerful. So although it was horrible, it was actually a really good weapon for us to use in the campaign. So how can I use that? So tactically, I can use that from a social media point of view. I can put that on all our social profiles. I can get people engaging. All the questions: why is it like that? How is it like? Where are these fishing vessels coming from? What the Brexit thing, as you said, was something that was prevalent when we first started doing this, because the UK was leaving the European Union, and lots of people conflated the two issues. They weren't really related, but it was a newsworthy issue, so we jumped on that as well. Most of the trawlers are Dutch and Russian, but that's, again, it's an irrelevance. It's not a kind of partisan thing. It's a understanding that these trawlers go around the entire world. So how can we communicate that? So we could do that, as I said, through social media. We could do that to the press. So I sent every picture of every dead dolphin to every journalist I could think of who might be interested. And I gave them information on the ships that were in the channel using AIS tracking, so that they could see where the ship was at the time that the dolphin popped up. And of course, I couldn't, if this was a court of law, I couldn't say that this dolphin came from that ship, but I could tell you that those ships were in the channel at this period of time, fishing around off Sussex at that period of time. And we got 5 bodies in 5 days, the period of time that they were there. So there's a reasonable assumption that there's a link there. So that drove media interest in terms of
so what was the media interest like? I mean, how did the press respond?
I mean, really positively. They were, first of all, shocked. How can this be happening? And we were like, well, that's our point. How can this be happening? Exactly. Welcome to our world. We want you to communicate that as the press, and take it outright. So I think they were shocked. They needed to go through the whole understanding what a super trawler is, why they're allowed to fish there. And again, without boring you to details, but the difference between British sovereign waters, which are within the 12-mile limit all around the UK, and the exclusive economic zone, which is where the UK and all countries sell fishing rights beyond that 12-mile limit. So it was about saying they're not in British waters, but they are in the British exclusive economic zone. So therefore, we can impact that if we reach out to the UK government, if we start putting pressure on them to change legislation. And we later discovered that one of these vessels, the Frank Boniface, which is a British registered super trawler, although it's based in Holland, owns 23% of the British fishing rights in terms of. So that's the industry behind these super trawlers. They're massive organisations. They have a lot of wealth. They're using flagged ships, so ships that are based in the Netherlands but flagged in the UK, to buy up British fishing rights. So all these kind of issues we're uncovering with the journalists, because obviously they're doing what they're very good at, which is researching, reaching out to the super trawlers themselves, getting responses from them, and we're kind of pushing this motion along. So the press was another angle, and content's another angle. Obviously video, a lot of it we couldn't show, but unfortunately the images in the video that we're seeing, we're pushing that out as well. So I guess the 3 elements that I really focus on tactically were that social media, press, and the content angle as well, and helping people to understand, as we said, you can fit 450 tennis courts into a net. These vessels are up to 140, the biggest is 144 meters. It can carry 11,500 tons of frozen fish, when it's out. The scale is mind-boggling. It's so massive. The problem is it's so massive that people don't believe you. You have to really try and use sources that can help them to see it. It's not just us talking it. We're not, just some crazy activists. We're actually doing this for a reason. We're seeing it on our beaches. So
yeah,
we felt that obviously we haven't been able to solve the issue, but we're, as I said at the start of this, in terms of the awareness, education, action, we're raising awareness. We're onto education in terms of other ways. You don't have to fish that way. We understand that people want to eat fish, fine, but you don't have to fish in this way. There are plenty of other ways that you can fish. It doesn't have to be on this massive scale. There are other better ways to do it. I think that's the message.
Yeah, and I remember the British Prime Minister talking about the hoovers of the sea, which using his usual oratory was kind of a blunt way of describing what's going out there. And I think it's a really good example, actually, of just how one issue can link to a much bigger issue and raise more support. If your communication skills, and employers are looking for those skills nowadays. I mean, we did a review at Conservation Careers a couple of years ago. I mean, we're on a mission to help people achieve career success within conservation, whether you're looking to kind of start your work or whether you're switching or whether you're already in the sector. And so we start from the viewpoint of, well, what skills are employers really looking for, that we're not delivering quality training yet within the sector? Like, well, where are the sort of niches where we can actually have more impact and help more people, achieve that career success within the sector? So we analysed all the jobs that we've listed through Conservation Careers over the last 8 years now, which is over sort of 30,000 jobs from 100 countries. And what we found was 41% of all jobs list communication skills within them, which I was staggered by, to be honest. So it's not just like communications officers or social media managers or marketing managers or whatever it might be, which are kind of standalone communication jobs. About 10% of all jobs are those jobs. So 10% of conservationists are communications professionals, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. But there's another 30 odd percent, of people within the movement who need communications jobs. So skills, I should say, week in, week out. So as part of your job as a scientist or as a fundraiser or as a researcher or as a project manager or whatever it might be, you need to be doing some comms stuff as well. You need to be writing stories and blogs. You might even be talking on podcasts nowadays. You might be delivering videos. You might be doing, press releases, whatever it might be. Employers are looking for those skills. And I think it probably relates, I don't know how you feel, but it probably relates to the fact that quite a lot of the sector is dominated by like small charities, just like the Sussex or Brighton Dolphin project. Within a charity like that, everyone's doing lots of different jobs. Although you've got a job title, you're actually covering a lot of different skills, within your individual role. It's unlikely you'll have a whole communications team to just do that stuff. Everyone will do a bit of comms across their jobs. Do you see that?
No, I think it's amazing because it absolutely mirrors my experience of coming into the sector a few years ago. As I said at the start, feeling like an imposter. What can I possibly add to this world? Suddenly realizing that I can add a lot. And having, you've done the research, you've seen that that's something that employers are really looking for. And it makes sense, from, again, being on the ground when we're doing presentations to children in schools or when we're doing presentations to businesses in Sussex, or when we're doing, again, that's a form of communications, and I can help the people, the marine biologist that we have on, she's brilliant. But communications isn't part of the many years of academic excellence that she's achieved. That hasn't been part of it. She's an expert in cetaceans. She studied harbour porpoises, but communicating those findings hasn't been in her repertoire, so I can help her with that. Again, there's many roles like that can be helped with, not just through communications, but other professional skills like legal people, accountants, or whoever. They're all, I believe, in need, but specifically through communications, I've seen that on the ground. Definitely, I think it's not just about talking to press. And when people say, "Well, how do we get this story out?" I say, "Well, you just call a journalist," and they look at me blankly, and I go, "Ah, yeah, right. Okay, I can see the confusion now." But to me, it's second nature, but I get that's not something that everyone feels comfortable doing, and I completely understand that.
No,
but it's the skills of, I think, Nick, we've spoken about this many times. the skills, I call them loosely, are very obvious from a point of view. You develop the story in a very simple way, communicate it to an audience that makes sense in the way that they understand information, and you get it out there. But there is a process, and I think that's something that many people in the conservation sector could learn from, and there's lots of skills that they could bring out from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when we did this review, actually, it sort of breaks down according to really what you were saying. What are employers looking for? They're looking for communication skills. Other skills actually that popped out when we did our review as well. Fundraising skills were really important. Project management skills. If you have comms, fundraising, and project management skills, that will certainly make you a lot more employable and a lot more effective. Within the conservation movement, employers look for those things. But comms, I say, is 41%, which I find really impressive and sort of staggering. But then when you break that down and say, well, what comms skills they're looking for, because it's such a big area, communications. We're only really sort of touching the surface, really, in terms of our sort of conversation today, and it's evolving all the time. But what they're looking for at the moment, the kind of top, I guess, 6 things are, and I've got them written in front of me here. So, producing a communications plan. I guess if you're listening here, you think, can I do this? Can you produce a communications plan to do some planning around something? There's a dead dolphin on the beach. How do you turn that into a plan of action that has goals and audiences and outcomes and everything like that? Writing engaging copy, number 2, for conservation projects. So actually, writing things down in a way that journalists or other audiences will understand. Getting press and media coverage, number 3, bread and butter for you, Lloyd, but not for the rest of us. Number 4, building and engaging audiences on social media, really important nowadays, and we know what that might be. Number 5, creating content to support your projects, whether that's video or whether that's visual imagery or podcast or whatever it might be. What is that content? How are you going to deliver it? And then finally, measuring your success. So not just doing it, but being clear as to whether what you're doing is actually, moving the needle, if you like. So there's sort of 6 things that really employers across the board were looking for those sorts of skills. And so, a year ago, you and I, we came together and said, well, let's build a course around this. We have a community of people who are looking for skills and looking to improve their employability and impact within the sector. And Lloyd, you've got these skills in abundance from your sort of 23 years of working on specifically this, and now your expertise within the conservation arena. So we developed this course together, Communications for Conservation Projects, and it's been a whale or a cetacean for want of a better pun. We launched it a year ago, didn't we? And it's gone brilliantly. I mean, I'm so delighted, with how it's been received by participants. But yeah, talk through, what's the last year been like from you? You're the course leader for this. I mean, how have you found it?
I found it fascinating for a number of reasons. One, because we don't just get people who want to be communicators on the course. Obviously, we get scientists, we get researchers, we get students, we get career switchers, whoever that might be. They all come from different backgrounds and want to use communications for different reasons, and many of which I hadn't even thought of. So I find that fascinating, helping them to use a part of the communication skills for whatever role they want. So I think that's been really interesting from a personal point of view. Secondly, them taking on board, I've always tried to demystify communications, because people always talk about it being smoke and mirrors and talk about it being, a little black book of journalists, all that rubbish doesn't exist. I've always tried to demystify that and say, look, there's simple things that you can do, planning being one of them, learning how to write, but writing for an audience, not about being a novelist or about being an amazing creative writer, because I'm not that, but about the way that you set up a piece of writing for a specific audience. So a journalist doesn't want pages and pages and pages of writing about a story. They want a very simple pitch in 4 paragraphs. How you structure that, those sorts of things will make the difference between your story appearing in a newspaper and not. If you send pages of content to journalists, they're just going to delete it. Don't waste your time. Those kind of things, I think, can be broken down into a really simple skill set. And that's what we've tried to achieve through this course. So I believe anyone, whether you have any comms experience or not, can go through this course and take something out of it. And that's really what I wanted to achieve, because I believe fundamentally the best thing I can do from a conservation point of view is get as many people out there understanding these skills so that they can take that forward and go and do amazing things in whatever sector of conservation they're doing. Just take on some of these skills. Even if you only use 10% of it throughout your entire career, I'm hoping that will help. And that's really what I want to achieve. So I think it's been a massively valuable experience for me getting that feedback. And we've also seen, as you know, Nick, some of the, I guess, graduates or the people who've been through the course have gone on to do amazing comms roles, and some of whom I'm working with day to day now. So I found that really valuable as well.
That's been so rewarding, hasn't it? I think we were talking beforehand, it's certainly over 200 students go through. I think it's probably over 300 across 2 cohorts. So we launched it a year ago in November, and we launched this for a second cohort again about 6 months ago. And we'll be looking for cohort 3 again quite soon. And yeah, it's been fantastic. And as you sort of mentioned, like we've had a few people, even quite recently, actually, like, graduate from the course. We call them comm stars, and go off into communications roles now. And we know that the course was a real foundation, a real launch pad actually for that process. I mean, have you got any particular examples of people that have taken the course that have, directly improved their employability, got a job, or whatever it might be as a result of the course? Because as a course leader, you're really in contact with people almost on a daily basis, actually, through the community group that we run alongside the course.
Yeah, completely. So I've been lucky enough to stay. A few of them we've crossed over. So in some of the sectors that I'm working in, obviously marine conservation, there's quite a few people in there. There's a few in African wildlife conservation that I focus on as well. And some of the stuff, and all this stuff I use through the course to offer real examples. So when I run an example from Sussex Dolphin Project, or run an example from Cheetah Conservation Fund, it's something that I've worked on and delivered, and that people, I think, can relate to that. So through that, there's been a few, in fact. Charlie, who went to work with the Cornwall Seal Research Trust as a result, mentioned in her interview that she was doing the course at the time, and got the role as part of that. Hopefully we helped along that process. Mickey, who is another amazing person who went through the course, who really connected with the course detail itself, was put forward for a role with the World Cetacean Alliance, which is the parent charity of Sussex Dolphin Project, to become their comms manager. And in fact, got that role and started a month ago. And she's now working with me on the Super Trawler campaign, day-to-day basis. I'll have a meeting with her tomorrow, in fact. So I am working with people who've come through this. I'm not saying I can get everyone a job. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that certainly I've been surprised by the level of excellence in terms of the people coming through. And as I often say, when people submit their task work, so one of those being a press release, for example, I've often been surprised that these press releases that are coming through students are better than the people that I pay through my agency to write for me. So that's a bit, I'm not sure if that means I'm a bad employer or they're great students. But anyway, I've been surprised at the levels coming through. And it's, hopefully that means the course works in terms of communicating what's needed, but also in terms of, the talent that's coming through, I can see works really well.
Yeah, it's great. And it's just so nice and stepwise as well. You know that the outcome's there if you just follow the simple process that you outline across each of the modules. Yeah. Okay, well, let's, I guess, sort of wrap things up really for today. I mean, if people are listening to this and they're really interested in knowing a bit more about, communications and looking to kind of develop their skills, we are about to launch and look for our 3rd cohort really soon. So we're going to open up enrollment for 5 days at a special discounted rate as well. So you can keep an eye on the website. You can keep an eye on the emails that are going to come along too. And that's from Monday, the 14th of November through till Friday, the 19th of November. So if you're listening at launch day on the podcast, or it's probably next week for you. If you're listening in December, you've missed it, I'm afraid. We will be offering, a especially discounted rate. And what we're going to do is cover those 6 main areas I talked about before. So communications planning, writing copy, press and media coverage, building and engaging audiences, creating content to support your projects, and also how you measure the success of your communications activities. Those kind of 6 main pillars that employers are looking for. And Lloyd will walk us through the step-by-step process as to how to do this, with an associated task as well at the end of it, which you're welcome to share and get feedback as well from us, through a kind of private community that we support alongside the course. Other bits of the course that people get access to as well. So beyond just the kind of the core material, which you get for a whole year, you can do entirely at your own pace. You get support from Lloyd. You're a really active supporter. You're really there in the community helping people, which is just brilliant. And that alone is just so valuable to people. And I know you kind of enjoy that, but you spend a lot of time doing it too. So thank you on behalf of us and all the kind of comm stars that go through it. You get the 6 modules. You get the access to our community I've mentioned already. You also get a year's access to what we call the Conservation Careers Academy, which is access basically to the whole of conservation careers that we have. So we list around 12,000 jobs a year. You can access all of those. It's the biggest conservation job board online, I'm proud to say. We also have a CV talent pool you can upload your CV into. We have an online forum. We've got about a dozen ebooks as well, which you can get downloaded in full. And we're building out that academy actively right now. It's about to become even better very soon. And you will get that as part of the kind of comms course. There's a 14-day money back guarantee. Okay, it's not the hard sell, but if you want to try it and if you don't like it, you can always come back to us within 14 days and you will get your money back, no problem whatsoever. And at the end of it, really valuable, I think, for your CV and for interviews, is you get a certificate as well. So everyone who completes the course, you get a certificate of completion as well. And you can kind of list that, I say, in your CV, your resume, your application forms. And it's something that employers, will be impressed by, and it sort of shows that you don't just know it, but you've actually, practiced and implemented it to a standard, that is industry standard because it's been led by Lloyd. So we've got a lot coming up. Lloyd, thank you so much for kind of jumping on the call today. And thank you for being such an amazing course leader, with the kind of communications projects. It's been great chatting with you. Is there anything else you kind of want to say to people who might be interested in kind of being part of cohort 3 that's kind of coming down the road in a couple of weeks' time, or a message we want to maybe leave people with?
Yeah, I think actually the community side of the course has really been a welcome surprise as well, actually. But so that Nick was just saying, I do give feedback on every module, every task of every module that is submitted. And I don't just do that because it's part of the course. I do that because I enjoy it, because I think the feedback aspect is really powerful. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is a lot of people throughout the course have made contacts with their fellow comm stars. And I know that they have taken those relationships forward in terms of helping with their careers. I know that they've helped each other, with interviews and all those aspects. I know certainly from my point of view as well, I've been connected with some brilliant people in terms of scientists and researchers, and people areas that I'm really interested in. I didn't expect to find people involved in my other passion, which was with dogs, which was livestock guardian dogs and all that kind of thing. That we've found 2 or 3 people have been working in those areas, which is something I work on with Cheetah Conservation Fund. So again, you'll be surprised, I think, by the level of person, different skills, different interests, different areas of experience that you can use through that community. So I think that's a really powerful part of it. It's been really useful to me. Yeah,
it's just great connecting with the people from all across the globe, whether they're a student, a career switcher, a professional conservationist already looking to develop your skills. You're all very much welcome within the course, and you'll get our support through that. Lloyd, thanks again. It's been wonderful catching up and chatting. Thank you everyone for listening, and keep your eyes open for the enrolment. And say it opens on the 14th of November. That's Monday. And it closes on the 19th, which is Friday at midnight UK time. Okay, at a special discounted rate. Thanks again, Lloyd. You take care.
Thanks, Nick. Nice to see you again. And thanks for giving communications the focus I believe it needs.
Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. If you did, then please do hit the subscribe button to get notified of new episodes as they drop. And also please give us a rating or a review, because it really helps us to get in front of more people. Now, if you want our help to get clear and get started and get hired as a professional conservationist, I recommend you enroll in our free online training program, exploring how to get a conservation job. So if you're a student, a job seeker, or a career switcher, you'll learn the golden rule about how to get started, the key mistakes to avoid, and also we'll answer your biggest questions. You can check that out at conservation-careers.com/free. See you soon.